So this is it, episode number 4, the final episode of Got Your Back podcast, Comedy Nerd Out.
That's right, we're doing a BBC style, 4 episodes of season 1.
Season 1?
Season 1.
Spoiler alert. So we got more to look forward to, but in this episode, we have just 4 speakers. No musical act. We just got straight to the talking, and coming up first is myself doing a speech. I want to thank KC for talking me into it. I wanted to do something a little bit more outside the box. I've been improvising for about a decade, it seems to be. Even longer, since high school. I did acting in high school. I've trained in Chicago, here in Austin, back in Dallas. I read all the books that I can get my hands on and studied with all the teachers that I can get my hands on as well. So I was glad to be able to do a speech.
Yeah, and you're the artistic and education director at Cold Town Theater.
Mm-hmm.
You're a coach. You currently coach Midnight Society, correct?
Different groups.
Different groups throughout your history of coaching. You're an amazing teacher, typically teaching levels 3 and 4, the Herald class. You're an inspiration on stage. You have such an interesting and amazing take on improv and a great comedic mind that, it's always a joy. Oh, wow, he thought of doing that way. It's always such an inspiration. You really play from your heart and play only as Cody can. It's really a great inspiration.
Thank you, Casey. Jeez. Well, all that said, coming up after me in the show, we have Mr. Jericho Thorp, another good friend of mine, a member of Midnight Society. He's been performing for a while at Cold Town Theater. Saturdays at 10, you can catch Midnight Society. Jericho teaches as well at Cold Town, and is just one of the best actors that I know. His commitment to his characters is second to none. So I really enjoyed his speech, and he took his time and committed to his speech as well, and just brought his voice to it in a way that only Jericho could. So I loved his speech.
And he's an amazing coach as well. I've fortunately been coached by him before. Does great side coaching. I know he's coached several amazing teams.
Loverboy
right now. Yeah, he and as a teacher, he's amazing. So he lots of great insight in his speech, and it's very Jericho-y.
Which perfect. After him, we have Mr. Will Cleveland. He's an improviser who moved here, I think, a little over a year, maybe 2 years now. I've been lucky to know Will for a while now. He moved here. He's UCB trained. He was on a video sketch group there. He was doing work up at UCB.
New York UCB.
New York's UCB, and then moved here, and now he teaches our video classes at Cold Town. And just a supremely knowledgeable, very talented performer. And super funny. Also does great characters, and just the nicest, most helpful guy.
Just a great part of the improv scene and the comedy scene in general. Super supportive. He also, along with Chris McKeever, does play-by-play at Cold Town Theaters. I think that's the 3rd Saturday of every month.
Sort of inside baseball meta show where improvisers are offering commentary on other improvisers' scenes. It's a very, very interesting show.
He's awesome to watch on stage. He's great to chat with about improv and about comedy in general. He's just a genuinely cool dude.
Yeah, so find him on Facebook. Send him some questions about it. Message him some questions about improv. He'll answer them. We promise. Coming up last in this episode, we have Mr. Arthur Simone, one of the co-owners of Cold Town Theater. Just one of my favorite people. When I was getting into improv, he was one of the people that hooked me. Arthur is, like we said about Jericho, just so uniquely Arthur. He has a tremendous voice. He's talented at everything. He's won awards he's won the O. Henry Pun-Off in Austin. He's won local air sex competitions, air guitar competitions. He's an awesome painter. He won acting awards. He's directed and written shows. Basically, just done it all.
Artistic, just a big artistic person, and improv is a part of that. He's got a great big artistic mind, and you can tell that he takes everything he does seriously and with commitment and passion. Very, very talented person and a big intelligent mind.
We don't want to spoil it for you. But his speech was also a little bit outside the box. It was really interesting. So
and some would say it's a cliffhanger for season 2.
Some might say, but that's enough from us for now. We'll go ahead and get into it. So we hope you enjoy. Please welcome your first speaker, myself, Cody Deering.
Hidden messages, meanings, and conspiracies. Ladies and gentlemen, Cody Deering.
This is your last chance. After this,
there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and you believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more. There's a film class that I remember taking in college that at the time I thought was total bullshit, but I eventually came around on it some. The course was a requirement for UT film majors called Narrative Strategies. The course description that someone was paid to write reads, "This class focuses on the study of how meaning is structured and perceived through the aesthetics of audio-visual images." Basically, we would watch a movie or a TV show and we would talk about what the creators, the actor, director, or content itself was trying to say. Why the director made the choices they did, whether or not their doing so was an attempt to communicate something. For example, we might watch an old movie together and the teacher would suggest that the reason that the lights were down low and we were only catching glimpses of the lead character obscured through one of those old partition accordion room folding divider things that women used to change behind all the time in old movies, you know, they'd suggest the reason that we couldn't see the character behind that right now is because they were feeling uncertain and unclear. So the director was consciously choosing not to let the audience see them clearly. Hundreds of dollars I paid for this class. The part about all this that I took issue with particularly was that the class would be asked to write these essays interpreting the films. But it didn't matter what you made a case for as long as you backed it up with something from the work. Something you consider to be evidence supporting your theory. It didn't matter what the director was trying to say. It was more about how the observer read it. So we would watch films like this documentary about Disney movies being problematic for a number of reasons, and 20-year-old me would think, but maybe they weren't trying to reinforce gender stereotypes, or perhaps they didn't mean to be so blatantly racist. The Little Mermaid isn't supposed to be about how you should give up everything for the person you love, and Beauty and the Beast isn't intended to encourage people to deal with domestic abuse. Did Beast ever hit Belle in that movie? I don't remember, but regardless, you can make a case for those theories from those films, I think. So intended or not, I think there's definitely validity to those readings. The idea that the audience gets to read your work in whatever way they will please can be a troubling thing. But does that matter? Is putting the work out there only the first step and every person is then free to read the work whatever way they choose? I mean, that sounds right, but it also sounds more like handing someone a coloring book than a photo album. And it reminds me of one of the reasons that Dave Chappelle gave for walking away from the Chappelle Show. I can't recall which interview I heard this in, which again makes for a great research essay. But I remember Chappelle talking about seeing some racist person turn his sketch that was intended to be against racism and using it to further racism. I think it was the sketch about the blind racist who doesn't know that he's the race that he hates, and someone, somehow Dave saw maybe on the internet comments or something, he saw some racist idiot be like, yeah, stupid other racist, when the intent of the sketch was the opposite of that. And it seemed to bother him, which I understand. Because if you create the content, you're on some levels responsible for its impact, and yet I think there are some people who are going to read the world the way they want regardless. It's hard to say how responsible creators are for the unintended readings of their works, or perhaps if you handed the same aforementioned racist idiot a blank piece of paper, they would come back with a similar racist reaction. So how, if at all, responsible are the Beatles for Charles Manson's murders, right? That he listened to Helter Skelter and the White Album and he thought the lyrics confirmed his own. He was like, they're singing about my ideas. It's clear everyone is on the same page. So if this is indeed true, would there unfortunately be some validity to the claim that the Beatles had some influence, however minor, in the murders? I think it would be unreasonable to hold them accountable. But a question worth pondering. When it comes to the intended readings of movies, TV, etc., it's important to remember that there exists at least the possibility that creators are trying to say something with their work, either about the movie itself, about the world at large, even a simple wink to the audience like Easter eggs in a Disney movie. Finding Nemo shows up as a sticker in Toy Story 3. In the 1977 print of The Rescuers Down Under, there's an image of a topless woman in a window in the background during a chase sequence. And it used to, I guess the film rate used to not show fast enough. enough that they didn't think it would show up, or the animators didn't think someone found it, but they released a printing of that and had to recall it, the 1977 version. For you, all of you looking for one picture of a topless woman in the background of a cartoon. Mufasa's face looks like a lady's butt. Look it up. A clothed lady, sort of copper tone butt sort of thing going on. Knowing that messages exist cause people to look for them and sometimes see them when they aren't there. Those previous examples of Disney Easter eggs seem like conscious efforts, whether or not they were meant to be found, at least in my assumption. And beyond just Easter eggs, there are other ways directors might be trying to communicate with the audience. They might hide in plain sight clues about the truth of the film, like watching M. Night Shyamalan's craftsperpiece, The Sixth Sense, the second time and realizing there was evidence all along that Bruce Willis was dead, and you just didn't notice because M. Night pulled one over on you. Or perhaps maybe it might be something more along the lines of a real-world truth the director is trying to get across. Or maybe they're making some sort of social commentary. There's a fantastic documentary on Netflix right now called Room 237, full of varying theories about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and what it's really about. From it being an admission that Kubrick faked the moon landing, as evidenced by things like Danny's Apollo 11 sweater he wears while playing on a carpet that looks similar to a NASA launch pad, to another theory which suggests that it's about the slaughter of Native Americans in the awakening from the nightmare of history, pointing to Native American imagery used throughout the movie and Danny and Wendy's more earth-toned wardrobe in contrast to Jack Nicholson's red, white, and blue wardrobe. My favorite theory posed by Room 237 was mention of a supposed rivalry between the film's director and the author of The Shining, Stephen King. The theory points to a scene where Dick Halloran is driving through a snowstorm. He's trying to get to the Overlook Hotel, and he passes a car wreck, and he sees a red Volkswagen that's been crushed by a semi-truck. In the book, The Shining, the main character drives a red Volkswagen, but in the movie, the main character drives a yellow Volkswagen. And so the theory suggests that this was Kubrick saying, "Fuck you" to Stephen King. This movie was his vehicle, and he was going to do with it what he wanted. So if Kubrick were still alive, we could ask about the true meaning and intent behind his films, and still, I think it's important to remember that the audience doesn't need to ask. We're free to interpret a work however we please. And in those interpretations, we find a lot of fun as well as a lot of replay value. Movies, TV, and other media can be given new life in the sense that you can watch them through new filters and glean untold variety of meanings from them, intended or otherwise. Sometimes unintentional readings become popular theories that take on a life of their own and become urban myths. Going back to the earlier category of examples of Disney Easter eggs, there's a myth that in The Lion King, the word sex is spelled out by some dust that poofs out into the sky when Simba lays down, right? The animators indeed put something in there. They meant to spell SFX, and people read it sex. So there are also a number of alleged hidden boners in Disney movies, most of which have been debunked. So these are mostly debunked boners. But there's also the, right, like in, what is it? The Little Mermaid, the priest is like standing, he's marrying them, and he's supposed to be standing on a box. And the joke is that it's his knee coming up, and you see his knee, but people are like, that's his boner. The animators did comment on that one. There's another one, that the alleged whispered phrase in Aladdin, good teenagers, take off your clothes. Has anyone heard of this one? They actually say, come on, good kitty, take off and go. But that's what people wanted to hear. That's what they say it was. So though these myths are easily refuted by a mere moment of Googling, it's not unlikely that you've heard of one or more of them, perhaps. Be it through the grapevine, or maybe you read a BuzzFeed listicle one day while you were bored at work. These theories can be, if nothing else, interesting to consider. So one final concept I wanted to mention was also, also one that I learned in UT's Narrative Strategies film course, the idea of intended dual readings, as I know it. The example I like to use to explain it is Tim Allen's current show, Last Man Standing. The description of this show on ABC's website, if you're not familiar, which again, someone was paid to write, reads, Tim Allen will return as Mike Baxter in Last Man Standing, a show about everything that families are dealing with today. All of it. All filtered through the blunt man's man comedy of an iconic American dad. Mike continues to be surrounded by forces seeking to challenge his ideas on just about everything in which he strongly believes. This show is genius in a way because you can watch it as a man's man and think, oh, these ladies and liberal dummies don't get it. They just keep trying to change Tim Allen, but he's a man's man. Or you can watch it and think, Tim Allen's a fucking asshole who doesn't listen and just doesn't get it. right? If intentional, this tactic is genius. And if the theory is then true, both readings, though essentially the opposite of one another, are equally valid in my opinion, which again reminds me of being in the narrative strategies class thinking that it was dumb. If you can make a case for anything and that was all it took to give it validity, just one piece of evidence and it was valid, valid in what way? I suppose just for consideration, because under closer inspection, a lot of these theories don't hold water, but a theory doesn't have to be true to be a theory. It just has to theorize. And when we look at the intended messages versus the unintended messages, it's hard to say which is more important or valid or true or whatever qualifying word you want to use. The creator puts their truth into the work, but it may not be the same truth that the observer takes from it. And that's okay, in my opinion. So with all that in mind, for your consideration, here are some of my favorite theories about popular movies, TV, video games, and music. Okay, sure, we'll start there. Dark Side of the Moon, right? It syncs up with The Wizard of Oz. When the two are played simultaneously, there are parallels between the two that you read. I recommend watching it on YouTube, where the audio is synced up for you, and there are little pop-up video style things that point out the coincidences for you. I also recommend drugs for that experience. All right, video games. So there's a theory that Super Mario Bros. 3 is all a play. The game starts with a curtain rising. The platforms that you traverse to get through the level are all bolted to the background. You can see them casting shadows on what should be the sky, and then every level ends with you exiting stage right? Offset? There are a multitude of theories surrounding popular movies, and one that has been confirmed is the director of the original 1987 RoboCop confirmed that he intended to portray RoboCop as a Jesus-like figure. Quote, it is about a guy who gets crucified in the first 50 minutes of the film and then is resurrected in the next 50 minutes and then is like the super cop of the world. He also points out that the character's somewhat un-Christ-like violence as deliberate since RoboCop was meant to be the American Jesus. Another theory, which has some confirmation, I think, is Spider-Man's web fluid he sprays from his wrist represents... Okay, so writing this, I struggled. Deciding which word to use here. I really want to say spooge to break the tension of this and make it less gross, but we're mature researchers, scientists. So Spider-Man's web fluid he sprays from his wrists represents semen. There apparently exists an unused Spider-Man movie script written by James Cameron in 1991 containing the following scene where Spider-Man wakes up and something is causing the bedsheet to stick to him. He lifts it, revealing a sticky white mass, completely covering him, gluing him to his bedding. It's some silky substance, webbing him into the covers. He cries out in dismay, struggling to free himself from the gluey strands. Where did it come from? He notices his wrists. They're oozing a pearlescent white fluid. So the Cracked article, that was my initial source for this, went on to explain... One day, Peter's taking pictures of a pretty classmate, Mary Jane Watson. While gazing, enchanted at her beauty, he's bitten by a spider. The next day, Peter's body has changed. He's developed muscles in new places, but that's just the beginning. His body started producing sticky white stuff. The audience watches with vague feelings of discomfort as this teenage boy spends a long time trying to figure out exactly how to produce the newly discovered fluid, nervously telling his aunt to go away when she knocks at the door. I think that's a pretty compelling case. So we can't talk about conspiracy theories without mentioning 9/11. There are a lot of theories that suggest certain movies were trying to warn people about 9/11 before it happened. I watched a delightful video online which pointed out that Back to the Future's Twin Pines Mall, where Marty meets the Doc before the Doc is gunned down by terrorists. In the future, it's the Twin Pines Mall becomes the Lone Pines Mall. The shot of Marty first arriving to the mall is at 1:16 a.m., which of course inverted is 9/11! In The Big Lebowski, the dude is seen writing a check for half and half, dated September 11th, 1991, while George Bush can be heard talking on the TV in the background. Ooh. In The Big Lebowski, as well as host to a number of other interesting theories, my favorite of which suggests the movie is all imagined by John Goodman's character, Walter. Reddit user El Jefe Veterano explains... Quote, Walter Sobchak has been severely affected by childhood trauma, predisposing him to PTSD while serving in combat in Vietnam as a young man. He now sits around at a bowling alley talking to himself and bowling alone. The main narrative and subplot of The Big Lebowski are all formulated in Walter's imagination. Walter was raised Polish Catholic. It's been established that Jesus represents Catholicism and exposed himself to an 8-year-old. Perhaps Walter suffered religiously inspired and or sexual abuse while his family was active in the church at a young age. This may also partially explain a strong urge to remain Jewish, as he is fearful and resentful towards Catholicism. During interactions with Jesus and Liam, Walter usually remains silent and maintains a sort of stoic, intimidating posture, or is it bravado, covering his paralyzing fear? Ultimately, my opinion is that Jesus and Liam represent two church officials from Walter's past. Liam and me, we're gonna fuck you in the ass Wednesday, baby! Jesus is obsessed with asses. The dude and Donnie may represent two aspects of Walter. The dude being his ideal. Donnie represents Walter's childhood naivete. He is constantly out of his element, always confused, easily frightened, and anxiety-ridden. Donnie is only at peace when he is bowling, and the rest of the world is just muffled background noise, which is why Walter always wants to fuck it and go bowling. So there are quite a few theories, actually, that fall into the it was all in their imagination category. Some suggest that Ferris Bueller's Day Off is all in Cameron's head. The theory that sparked my interest in writing this essay was one about The Simpsons that seems to have originated by, again, another Reddit user. Hard to pick a name. So, quote, at the end of the 1992 episode Homer the Heretic, during a conversation with God, Homer inquires about the meaning of life. Homer is insistent that he can't wait until he's dead to find out, and God says, you can't wait 6 months? 6 months later, on April 1st, 1993, in the episode titled, So It's Come to This, a Simpsons clip show, Bart shakes up one of Homer's beers so much that when he opens it, it violently explodes, tearing the roof off of the Simpsons house and sending Homer to the hospital. At the hospital, Homer is crushed by a vending machine, and that sends him into a coma. The episode ends with Homer waking up the same day choking Bart, but the theory suggests that Homer never woke up from this coma, and that every episode since then has been a dream. The episodes before April 1st, 1993, are said to have more grounded plots. Homer tries to give up drinking. Marge considers cheating on Homer. Lisa has a crush on her teacher. Bart takes an IQ test. But the episodes after April 1st, 1993 are said to take place in Homer's imagination. Homer becomes an astronaut. He goes into space. He meets countless celebrities. Mr. Burns catches the Loch Ness Monster. And this also may suggest why no one in Springfield ever ages, though they experience birthdays. So, listening to that stone cold silence in this room. It's the sound of blown minds. All right. So moving on, two more here that I want to mention. One is my the most debated theories from my adolescence from Pulp Fiction spawned a number of theories regarding what the glowing contents of Marcellus Wallace's briefcase were. Some people believe it to be the diamonds stolen from Tarantino's previous film, Reservoir Dogs. The most common theory suggests that the briefcase contains Marcellus Wallace's soul, saying that the logic being that the combination is 666, and that's why the first shot of Marcellus Wallace is the back of his head with a Band-Aid on it, allegedly the location on your body where your soul is removed from, according to multiple sources on the internet. Quentin Tarantino has admitted that in the original script there were diamonds in the briefcase, but as this was too similar to Reservoir Dogs, he decided to change it. When Samuel L. Jackson asked Tarantino what was supposed to be in the briefcase, he said, whatever you want it to be. Admitting that the briefcase itself was merely a MacGuffin intended to move the plot forward, and the choice to leave the contents unknown was a conscious attempt to create mystery, inviting the audience to create their own theories. My favorite of which takes into consideration Tarantino's musical literacy and carefully hand-selected music for his films. It theorizes that the briefcase actually contains rock and roll. The briefcase is, quote, the briefcase is rock and roll. Marcellus represents the origin of rock music in America. Blues, Motown, soul, etc. Jules is Chuck Berry, and Vincent is Elvis. They go to get the briefcase back from the nerdy white guy who's trying to steal it. Maybe they represent record producers. The reason the guy that unloads a gun on them is unable to hit them is because legends of music can never die and will be around forever. Pumpkin and Honey Bunny from the diner, they represent the British invasion, and they also try to take the briefcase. Jules lets them leave with the money, but he keeps his bad motherfucker wallet. Butch, the boxer, being told by Marcellus to throw a fight, represents new and interesting rock music, allegedly, that continues to come out, and Marcellus doesn't like this. Butch and Marcellus are captured by rednecks while a country song is playing. The rednecks are said to represent country music, which also took from the blues. This is shown by them. Marcellus, Butch has a chance to escape, but he decides to go back and save them out of respect. Marcellus agrees to let Butch live, and they establish a truce and go their separate ways. So it's rock and roll in their theory. There's one final theory that I'd like to mention was my personal favorite from my research, and it involves beloved 90s sitcom Full House. Someone on the internet by the name of W.G. Nards created a chart showing the genetic likelihood that 3 blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls will be born from the genes of brown-haired, brown-eyed Danny Tanner and his deceased Greek wife, Pam, who, if you'll remember, is Uncle Jesse's sister. And although she came from an overly stereotypical Greek family, she had blonde hair. So the theory suggests that it would have been highly unlikely, albeit possible, for Danny and Pam to have produced 3 blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls. However, this result would have been much more likely if the girls were actually the daughter of Pam and blonde-haired, blue-eyed Joey Gladstone. That's right. This would explain why Joey, Danny's old friend from school, gives up his entire life having a place of his own to help raise 3 young girls. He's just a friend. He's doing it because he wants to have some part in raising his illegitimate children. That theory might sound crazy, but accurate or not, watching Full House through this dark lens has brought new life to the show for me. It's entirely different, and my reactions are as real and as fresh as they ever were during any original viewing, and things only get deeper when you realize that the third housemate, dark-haired Uncle Jesse, and his brunette wife, Rebecca Donaldson, also have 2 blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby boys. So, next time you're watching a movie or something on TV or anything, really, remember that your imagination and your own interpretation also play a part in the equation. The truth is out there, and it's trying to find you. Info Warriors, thank you. All right. Oh, thank you. All right, KCHG. Cool. So we got someone else coming up next, another essay. Who do we have?
That's right. Mr. Jericho Thorp.
Jericho Thorp.
Hello. Thank you. I wanted to talk about something more improv-centric, and maybe that's a sin at this particular gathering, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to talk about support. Unconditional support. What does that mean? Everybody is supposed to do it, right? And we talk about it all the time, and it's something that's drummed into people's heads over and over again. But what does it really mean? So, first of all, I want to talk about connections, human interaction, right? We're all in this together. This is a collaborative art form, and by this I mean improv. And we are bothered to be up here on stage together for the creation of the moments that occur on stage. Right? Part of that creation involves trust. Trust is a word that's bandied about. It's a hard word. Make no mistake about it. Trust is a dangerous word. When we were on the savannah together, trust was a big fucking deal. There were lions. There were cheetahs. There were other murderous assholes just like us roaming around doing really awful things to each other. And trust was a hot commodity. I want to say trust is a hot commodity. I don't think we really understand it. The basis of trust is the existence or lack of fear. Specifically, fear of other people. Right? And there's a lot that goes with that. We are social animals. And so there's a huge weight that's involved in interacting with each other. A lot of studies have come out recently to say that shame is quite possibly the worst punishment that a human being can suffer in their lifetime. It's real. At the turn of the century, or even before, when people were publicly ostracized or outed for their misdeeds or their misgivings, it was unrecoverable. We were small in our groups. We were not this large, amorphous, anonymous mass that we are now. Everybody knew each other's shit. Everybody was up in each other's business 24/7. And because of that, any mistakes or anything outside of the accepted social norm was bad news. So we were afraid, and we are afraid to do things without trust in each other, which is unfortunate, but it's a fact of life. So, life. Life today is, I would say, not any different than life all those years ago, right? We're still operating with the same software. Socially, physically, mentally, we have the same goods. We have not changed. We have not evolved. It's true, regardless of what you may think or what you may have read. We are still those cheetah-fearing, other human-hating, murdering people. Our eyes face forward. We are predatory. There's no arguing with it. So, how do we counteract fear, and how do we build trust? With love. Okay, all right. Fortunately, in our software, we also have love. Thank fucking God. Or we'd just be stabbing each other all the time. So we have this grand capacity to love. And I'm not just talking about person to person. We are capable of altruistic love. We can love everyone all the time if we choose. Right? It's in our best interest. We were tribes. So when there were 100 of us, which is about how big our groups got before they imploded, before agriculture, we needed love to get by, or else our groups didn't succeed. So we chose to raise each other's children, and we chose to not question whose kid was whose. Because guess what, folks? We love fucking each other, too. We really do. We fucking can't get enough of fucking. And back in the day, we didn't have condoms. We didn't have birth control. And so babies happened. And because of our limited resources and our mobility, we just said, fuck it. We'll all just do this together. Right? Which brings me to the concept of unconditionality. It's a word I invented for this speech. So, unconditionality plays into unconditional support on stage as an improviser, which means no matter what, no matter how much you fucked up, or no matter how good you are, which I don't think is stressed enough, no matter how much of a hotshot, big swinging dick performer you are, you also need to unconditionally love the other people on stage with you. If there's other people on stage with you performing, you need to make room for them in your heart, or you have to stab them. Which I don't recommend you do in a first world country anyways. So, part of unconditionality means taking care of yourself. Right? There's a lot of people that are out there that are very wise about performance who say take care of yourself and everything will be okay. What does that mean? It's pretty complicated, actually. It's not as simple as you may at first think. So, taking care of yourself means also taking care of the other people on stage with you. First and foremost. If you make them look good, they're going to make you fucking look good. Also, You need to be brave. So what does bravery mean? It's a loaded question. I was going to say before I started my speech that opinions are like assholes, and if you don't wash yours, it'll stink. So just keep that in mind. This is my perspective. Bravery means, I think, basically being willing to do the bullshit necessary stuff, no matter what. No matter if it makes you feel bad or if it makes you the asshole. It means taking care of yourself and taking care of other people and taking care of the tribe. So, on the opposite of that, we have fear. Why are we afraid? Why are we afraid all the fucking time? Why are we terrified? I think it's ego. And I think it's a fear of making mistakes. So, we're afraid because we want to take care of ourselves and we don't trust other people to take care of us. And maybe it's because you were broken, and I get it. I really do. I fucking get it. But you owe it to everyone else to take that leap of faith and take it for granted that maybe people actually want to be nice to you. So when we're afraid, it's because we're losing control. We're giving up control, or so we think. And when we give up control, we don't understand the outcome. We don't get it. We don't know what's coming. But by trusting people in your tribe who may or may not have created that baby along with you, you're creating a bond that lends itself to reliability. And reliability is okay. So, what does that mean for improv? First and foremost, I think it means get out of the way and get into the scene. Right? Sure, everybody's got some bullshit and you need to work something out on stage, and great. Maybe you should go see a therapist. While you're up here, you're a part of a group, a pack, a tribe of people that are creating something that's never existed before and will never exist again. So, get out of the way of that post haste. And just make it happen. What's the worst that could happen? Seriously, what are the stakes involved here, ultimately, in our first world country, where we're on stage with each other? Is someone going to descend on us and murder us? Are we going to look bad? Maybe. And that's okay. And it's okay to be afraid of that because, like I said, it's the worst punishment a human being can suffer. Proven time and again. Public shaming. There's nothing you can do worse to somebody. So, why do we get out of the way? Because it's our fucking artistic duty to do so. We have to be bothered to do it. Again, if it's a collective creative art form, we're all doing this together. You're not the director. You're in it with everyone. So, number one, it's okay to take this seriously. It really is. It's no big deal. You can do it. It's fine. Put the stakes up there. Make it mean something to you. It's okay. No one's going to fuck with you. As long as you're honest with yourself. Number two, it's okay to have fun. Simple. Number 3, which I think is maybe the most important thing, and I think this is the part that really fucks with people. It's okay to be good at this. It's okay to want to be good at this. It's okay to strive to be better every single time you do this. It's not some shithead thing. And finally, and this is the most important point I want to make tonight, it's okay to fuck up. Right? This all goes back to the public shaming. It's okay to fuck up. And why? Because that's how you find your limits, and that's how you find that sweet spot of excellence. By doing dumb, stupid, racist, sexist, weird shit up here, and then understanding what you've done afterwards. So, continued applied practice is okay. So, in summary, it's your duty to support each other in that tribe. Because otherwise, fuck it. You're just like the rest of those assholes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jericho. A comfortable way for me to stand for the rest of the night here. So I expose too much tender underbelly. Oh, gosh, moving right along. Got 2 more on the docket. Who do we have coming up next?
Mr.
Will Cleveland.
Thanks, KC. Thanks, Cody. This is called The Career Comedian in Today's Entertainment Industry. Disclaimer, take this advice if you want. These are merely observations that I've made that are meant solely as motivation for me and may not be for everybody. Michael Delaney said in my last sketch class at UCB, a good sketch is like a good song. It has an intro that sets the tone, a good memorable hook, and a bridge to rest the funny before it punches home to the end. I think he's exactly right, not only in the parallels of a song and a sketch, but in the parallels of music and comedy industries as a whole. We as comedians need to think less of ourselves as funny people who deserve a shot, but as artists in an industry full of people that needs the public to pay attention because we have something that we need to say. We frame our careers the same way musicians do. We train at our craft by going to jams and open mics. We form bands with improv teams and sketch teams. We put on shows in venues. We promote those shows. We make t-shirts. We make short 2-minute videos. MTV, anyone? We make recordings in venues and homemade studios. Comedy has mirrored the music industry for a long time. I'm not saying that it's a new thing. The first comedy record was produced and sold as far back as 1895. A recording by Cal Stewart, a vaudevillian and friend of Mark Twain and Will Rogers, reciting comedic stories, was among the first comedy albums ever recorded and sold. Also, comedians were just as relevant to a nightclub's entertainment as big bands throughout most of the 20th century. Throughout the latter third of the 20th century, however, the music industry and comedy made a split when comedy clubs and music venues became separated in the 80s, and the term MC took a whole other meaning. MTV, anyone? Comedians did okay, though, right? A few of them. According to Fortune magazine, Jerry Seinfeld was paid roughly $13,000 per line in the series Seinfeld. $13,000 per line. Roseanne, Brett Butler, Ray Romano were also among the stand-up comedians to make the jump from the mic to headlining their own sitcom. And then came cable and internet, and gone are the days of getting your tight five on the Late Show and being catapulted into sitcom superstardom. Nobody wants to pay for music anymore either. So the record industry has taken a big hit as well. More so than comedy, I think, because there were far fewer comedians getting sitcoms than musicians getting record deals. So the internet has redistributed the wealth, you might say, in the industry. Though you're probably not going to make tens of millions of dollars starring in a sitcom, you're more accessible to a wider audience through Twitter, YouTube, blogs. Much like the modern musician isn't making millions of dollars in record sales, we as comedians need to find other ways to generate income. The above mentioned may not sound like a great thing, but trust me, it's great for the art. There are no more gatekeepers to keep you from your audience. And who is your audience? I think we can explore that. I think we can explore it through something you hear comedians talking about all the time, and that's their comedic voice. So how do we equate finding our comedic voice to the music biz? I think we can explore it through musical genres. It's harder for the comedian to find his or her audience than it is a musician. Much of the musician's work in finding an audience has been done through the genre of music they play. So people know what they like to listen to, rock, pop, punk, hip-hop. Genres aren't as clearly established in comedy as they are in music. You can call improv jazz, but jazz isn't mainstream. And that's what most comedians, I think, are trying to be. What is your comedy genre? And I'm not talking about sketch versus stand-up. We need to break it down even more. Are you a raunchy blue comic? Do you do characters? Are you a long-form storyteller? Are you strictly a joke deliverer? And what about your sketch genre? Is it parody? Is it political? Do you do observational lists? You hear career comedians talking all the time about finding their voice. Sometimes the stand-up comic is looking for his character. So try thinking of your comedic voice in the term of a genre of music, one that will let your audience find you. Okay, speaking from personal experience, I know the importance of finding your comedic voice through my old sketch team at Upright Citizens Brigade. I was on a UCB video team from 2011 to 2013 with a group of writers, directors, and producers. One of the first things we talked about in our first meeting was finding our voice, which we all thought was really important. Now, this was a room full of writers and directors who are good. I mean, they're really good. They've gone on to work at Adult Swim, Louie, Late Night with Seth Meyers, Broad City, Saturday Night Live, and Cold Town Theater. We wanted to find our voice as a sketch team, but we ended up being a room full of very different voices. That made us into a genre team. We put out video after video that was completely different from the last. It was a great education in video production, but I don't think we were able to build an audience outside of the general UCB audience. So if you're a young comedian and you're listening to this and you've established your voice, it's taken you a long time to do that. You've trained in improv or sketch or both. You've been doing open mics. You're ready to be a career comedian. So what next? Again, you're an artist, so we'll put this into the perspective of a musician. So there are a number of things that musicians do that we as comedians should also be doing. Number one, musicians gig. Most of these are freebies starting out, but if you keep doing them, act professionally, you start to see I don't know, maybe $20 at the end of the night, just for showing up and doing your set. Keep doing them and acting professionally, and you get hosting gigs, opening gigs, featured gigs, and eventually headlining gigs. The key is to keep showing up and acting professionally. If you act like a professional, you'll be treated like a professional, and professionals get paid. If you haven't gigged, then you should get into the festival circuit. Living in Austin, you have literally no excuse not to submit to a festival. South by Southwest, Moon Tower, Sketchfest, Out of Bounds, Fun, the Funniest Person in Austin contest. Am I missing one? Betty Fest. These things happen all the time. We are a festival city. So that's what happens. You get a few credits to your name. You bill a few credits to your name. And then the more professional you become when you're gigging. And if you can't gig in your city, you need to draw the 100-mile radius around your hometown, which leads me to the next thing that they do. They tour. Road comics have been around forever, so this is nothing new. As a young comedian, you have to know that nobody is going to pluck you out of your city and put you out on the road. You have to make it a full-time job to get gigs on the road. This is really tough at first and doesn't pay enough to cover the travel expenses, but don't think for a second it's any easier for a musician. And you don't have to be a stand-up to do this. Get your improv, get your sketch, get your variety show, act out there on the road too. If anybody tells you that this is not how it's done, don't trust them because they have no idea how things are done anymore. The landscape has changed too much too quickly for any of us to know. It's up to you to decide what is going to work. Chris Gethard is in the second week of production of The Chris Gethard Show on Fusion Network, and he is reinventing late-night television. He started his show on the stage at UCB and then was on cable access for several years before getting a pilot ordered by Comedy Central that ultimately ended up going to Fusion Network as a series. This took Chris, who is a genius, mind you, 7 or 8 years to get a show from the stage onto cable television. Not to mention the 8 to 10 years before that Chris was training to become a great comedian. What I'm saying is it takes a lot of time to achieve your bigger goals, so start small. The Beatles sucked at making music when they were kids. They were just okay when they started out as a band. They didn't get good until Helter Skelter, and they got murdered everywhere. Okay, number 3, musicians make records, right? That's easy. But this is one of the bigger goals you should have. If you're a stand-up and you've been doing open mics for the last 5 years, you should be prepping your 40 minutes to make a record this year. If you're a sketch writer, you should be prepping a 20-minute podcast. If you only do improv, you should be exploring the endless array of ideas on how to record an improvised show. Number 4, musicians sell their own merchandise. If you're on the road, this will put more funds in the coffers. In 2011, Louis C.K. produced a comedy special and sold it on his website via PayPal. It's something we don't really think about now, but it sort of gave us permission as artists to not have to wait on some network or label to tell us it's okay to start making money. Granted, Louis had the money to produce his own special, but what you sell is up to you. You just have to make it you by putting your own twist on it. T-shirts and CDs, sure. But sell whatever the hell you want as long as you made it. A friend of mine is a comedian who makes song mashup albums, and he's really good at it. He wanted to sell his product at comedy shows. It's not his material, but it was something he spent a lot of hours producing. What he decided to do was to put his album on thumb drives, on a thumb drive, glue little model trees to them, and wrap them in plastic baggies like dime bags of weed. That way he wasn't selling the copyrighted material, but a memory stick that he had made his own and was able to sell in a fun and memorable way. Okay, moving on. Number 5. Musicians license their music for commercials. All right, this is slightly different. We as career comedians aren't likely to have our 3-minute bit being used as a soundtrack to sell Tide. But that doesn't stop us from doing commercial work as actors. Ad agencies and production companies are constantly looking for comedians for their ad spots. They want somebody who looks relatable with improv chops to keep the dialogue fresh and realistic. This one doesn't happen overnight, and the jobs are few and far between. So don't quit your day job. I'm not saying that in that condescending tone that you aren't good. Just don't quit your day job because you need one. Submit your stuff to agencies, talent agencies. You don't have to have a reel to do it, so get on that. Just get a resume and headshot together and submit it. Okay, number 6, they have a YouTube channel. Vine, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Periscope, these are all good mediums for you to be funny and find your audience. But YouTube is the only one that pays you to do it. The figures are very, very small, but we got to start somewhere. Try not to think about your YouTube channel as a way to get your TV show in front of people. You know, the TV show that you make. Think of your YouTube channel as just an extension of your art and your voice as a comedian. Make it 100% you. Make it your genre of comedy. Okay, 7, last one. Move to LA. This part's hard. I'm not saying that you have to move to LA to be an artist and to be good at what you do and to be happy. I'm just saying that LA is where the jobs are. You may be thinking, but I want to move to New York. Good. You should go to New York for 4 or 5 years and then move to LA. Eventually, the career comedian will end up moving to LA. The good news about moving to New York is there is very healthy competition for stage time that forces you to get really good and keep getting good. The better you are, the better your odds for success are in LA. All right, to sum things up, if you're a young comedian just starting out, it's important for you to find and hone your voice or find a genre of comedy that your audience will be easily guided to. So, on that note, you might be thinking, but what if my comedic voice or genre is music? Should I find a genre within music that is my comedy voice? Not exactly. I guarantee you that the same people who like Weird Al also like Tenacious D and Flight of the Conchords. Another thing you might be thinking is, my brand or comedy voice doesn't fit into any genre, so what am I supposed to do? Well, congratulations. You've created your own. You're Jim Henson. You're Tim and Eric. You're Chris Gethard. And I don't want you to feel like you have to predetermine your style of comedy. If you're a career comedian, chances are that you had very little choice in the matter. So it's important that you go out and just exist on stage as you and do the things that make you laugh. If you keep doing that, your voice or genre will present itself. It will work and continue to work to please the audience. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
One last.
Yeah, sad. Just one more speaker to present. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the last speaker of the evening, Mr. Arthur Simone.
If I go and pause here and there, it's not because I don't like you. I'm thinking about why I don't agree with what I wrote. There's a quote from T.S. Eliot I keep thinking on. We must not cease from exploration, And at the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we began and to know the place for the first time. You can say what you want about Cold Town Theater and the improv that we teach here, but if you really want to tickle my fancy, you will describe it as the theatrical equivalent of a cave painting. Meaning there's a very simple, very fundamental spirit that we do here that has everything to do about where we fit into Western theater art tradition, and yet nothing at the same time. So listen to what I say and then disregard it. We have a small space in here. We have a small stage. People are watching people do stuff, and we all exist in this realm of mutually complicit make-believe. And it's pretty fun. It's pretty funny. There are plenty of bit shows here, and there are shows with props and lights and sound cues. That's great. Do more of it. If you have the prop and it serves to heighten or subvert the joke, get it, make it, do it. But otherwise, this bare stage is your starting point. It is a gift. It is a choice when you make it. It can be beautiful when you have nothing. And so what I'm trying to single out here is a theater of minimalism that's very fresh, it's very socialist. It's ultimately as old as all of humankind and all the art that we've ever done and all the bits we've ever done. They're not mutually exclusive. It's nothing new under the sun. It's like Jericho said, the same software that everyone's loaded with. All it's ever taken for something to be described as theater is a space, a place, a seeing place of sacrifices, prayers, jokes, or in ancient Greek, a theatron. Greeks, theater, ER versus RE. Theater, as a word, theatron, got sucked into Roman classical design and came to mean a semicircle with tiered seating. Has anyone been to a theater? Right? It doesn't mean anything anymore. I like to think of any theater or place where whether it's the Globe or a place for donkey fucking, is a theater as in ER. So the Globe Theater, Cold Town Theater, Donkey Fuck Theater, all are ER. The study of the field of drama is more in line with what I think of as RE, the study of donkey fucking. I think a lot of Western traditional theater history is kind of, from an academic point of view, idiot-proof, and tries to elevate the idiot-proof voices that come along. And what we do here is very opposite that. You look at written theater like Shakespeare, Moliere, Pinter, Mamet. The playwright is telling you what to say and how to say it. A talented, untrained actor going head-to-head with an untalented, trained actor with some of this material might win on a coin flip. Maybe. The internet certainly has lent itself to an explosion and democratization of art. But these do-it-yourself forces have been around for as long as you can go back. You got pageant wagons in the Dark Ages in Europe that would roam the countryside to tell stories of hell, redemption, because some idiot thought it would be great to take all these crazy-ass stories out of the church and put them on a wagon in a theater troupe and send it around. Anyone could be in on that secret. It didn't just have to be the people in the big cities and the big abbeys. If you have a good stage voice, good physical presence, and you have a stage, however humble and simple, it lets an audience know that this is the proper time, this is the proper place to go see a work of theater, of make-believe, in front of an audience of your peers. You can do a show in a bar, you can do a show in a street corner, underneath a video store, any hole in the wall that you please. The driving force of an art that serves life and lends its voice from time to time is one that listens to the people and what the people want without the pretense of expensive equipment that is otherwise only available to some sort of priest class or scholar class. I'm talking about the Dark Ages here. We're still on the Dark Ages. But rather the people that surround us and who think and feel as we do. You look at the body of work of medieval plays commissioned by Dutch monarchs or Spanish merchants, and they're all jib-jabbing at their little political inside circles. And those plays don't really stay with us. They don't stand up. They haven't survived. They haven't been passed down. They haven't been written down because they were kind of junk. They were junk plays that were just feeding the pot of stew. The plays that stay with us after all these years are the ones that appeal to our basic human selves. Stories of young love, tragedy of war, betrayal, aging, feuds, and making amends. Commedia dell'arte was a very accessible independent theater movement because you could take a character and nobody owned the character. Nobody owned the story. It was all of our stories. It was all of our characters. During the Renaissance and the advent of the printing press, archives of Greek and Roman plays became widely available. People would look at Oedipus or the 30 Carries of Theophrastus and think, man, these people are thinking and talking like people. Imagine that. As opposed to rigid traditions of storytelling, of who the hero is, who the bad guy is, how to drag the audience along and join their perspective or be shunned or shamed. Here's a fun quote by Peter Brook in his 1968 book called The Empty Space. I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space whilst someone else is watching him. And this is all that is needed for an act of theater to be engaged. Right there, Peter Brook spelled it with an R-E, but he was British, so I forgive him. After years of working with the Royal Shakespeare Company, Peter Brook also came up with this controversial notion that classical works should be performed in as contemporary a style that you could get away with, while contemporary works would be performed like they were classics. Imagine going into a play not being told exactly what to expect. Baffling, right? Peter Brook isn't alone. I'm sure within the stodgy, prudish circles of the English theater, he probably felt like it. But there are lots of theater renegades that have left their mark over the last century alone. Live modern theater had this extraordinary power to start riots once upon a time. Alfred Jarry's Pere Ubu first started in 1896, and the first word was maigre, which was a play on merde, shitter. It started a riot. Art that has the power to start a riot is worth thinking about. Filippo Marinetti and his futurists took to whatever stage they could to irritate Italian high society with their manifestos. They were pelted by vegetables. Antonin Artaud in France, Jerzy Grotowski in Poland, Bertolt Brecht in Germany. All these directors and writers schooled in the Western tradition of theater all began to realize that the theater of their contemporaries was indeed just a place of snobbery, highly ritualized complacency, and that each of them had a hand in what became an avalanche of anti-establishment thoughts that took down the haughty notion of a well-crafted, expertly acted play, and they took that notion down. Any idiot can tell a joke, and there's something powerful in that. I don't have time to do anything but scratch the surface on those dudes. I'm happy to recommend more reading. Suffice it to say, there's a breed of theater artists that finds inspiration in the everyday, and there has always been that breed. Finding inspiration in the everyday, in the rough, the naive, the primitive, and the raw. The democratic theater starts equipped with the same physical tools as the caveman, the same software, the exact same opportunity to communicate something. This is part of the story of American improvisational theater, which I think many still think of as a low art. Most comedy, live comedy, is thought of as low art because there's no academic classical study roadmap. There's no control over it and what makes it good and what makes it right. It's either funny or it's not. Aristotle's writings in drama outline all the peaks and valleys you have to hit the right thing, to hit the right mark on the right pace, the right tempo, to elicit the right human emotion. But there's no such text for comedy, and I think that's pretty fun. improv stages, theater stages, joke stages, stand-up stages, vaudeville stages, burlesque stages. It was all a melting pot of 19th century American entertainers finding a way to build stages in holes in the wall. And they didn't need to know Theophrastus to know that a pie in the face is funny. Sid Caesar, Groucho Marx, all these guys, eventually Lenny Bruce, they all made it up as they went along. I think we're still doing that. Del Close came away from stints with vaudeville troupes. He had no pretensions about the best way to reach the best audience. There's never such a thing. There's no one way to get the reaction that you want in a laugh. I mean, there are a lot of ways. Theater traditions and educations teach us how to go deeper into patterns and ritual, sure, but you lose sight of the immediate human element that makes theater theater, and you may as well be dead meat. I don't know what that sentence is. I went off on some tangents, but I'll bring it back. Comedy improv, as I like it, it has no hierarchy. It has no playwright. It has no dramaturg. It has no lead actor or lighting designer or stage designer. It's just a simpler order of a live theatrical event in which anyone, audience or performer, can riot at any given time. Hopefully they choose to not. It's because of this dynamic human potential that we're given the obligation and the responsibility to listen to each other, to the audience, to our hearts, and to nurture the complicit environment in which magical make-believe transcends what the Academy thinks of us and transforms us into artists of the highest rank. Yep.
Well, that's it for this episode of Got Your Back's Comedy Nerd Out. We want to say thank you for watching. If you'd like to check out more episodes from us at Got Your Back Podcast, you can go to gybpodcast.com for episodes, or you can search for Got Your Back on whatever podcasting service you use. iTunes, Stitcher, we're on all of them. If you could drop us a rate and review, we would also appreciate that as well.